like a character act. I've walked off stage before and realised that my hair goes flat and I look like Hitler, and that the audience must have thought that all the jokes were intended in a completely different way.
Do you remember the first time you went on stage as a professional comedian or somebody who was on stage making
First
jokes?
time I was ever on stage?
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, we're not going as far back as school here, are we?
As far as you want.
In my professional career, well, I suppose I started at the holiday camps. So, I don't know if you know the British holiday camps that well, but Ponting's holiday camp. And my first time ever on stage was a cabaret who'd arrived late, and then a microphone was shoved in my hand in a very full ballroom, and I was told, go on and fill time until the cabaret gets here. And it was a hell of a lesson, because the cabaret took about 3/4 of an hour to arrive, and I was sitting in front of an audience singing every song I've ever heard, trying to get sing-alongs going, dancing. There was a football. I remember balancing on the football for a while, trying to juggle anything at all. So that was my first proper time on a microphone.
And what was the reaction of the audience?
They were in on the joke of the fact that what had actually happened was the cabaret was late and the management knew about it, and they were just throwing me in at the deep end. The audience kind of knew that, or got to realise that they were keeping me out there. So yeah, it was. Luckily, it was fun, but I was terrified.
So this was the applause for the trooper.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, actually, this kind of gallows humor. You know, everything's going wrong, but
Yes. Yeah.
Why do you think the British are so good at gallows humor?
Because our country's shit. Because our weather is unpredictable and usually awful, and there's so many people. We're so packed. We spend most of our time apologising, trying to get out of each other's way. And I think the humour. I think you always find the richest humour in the darkest places. I don't think. Years ago, I did some gigs for the troops, and I went to Ascension Island, which is like a tropical paradise, and that was after going to the Falklands. And when I arrived in the Falklands, everywhere we went in the Falklands, the audience, whether it was the locals or the troops, they were so excited to see us. And we couldn't say a word wrong. Every joke was hilarious. And then we went to Ascension Island, where the officers are leaning back on wicker chairs eating fruit off the trees, and there's giant turtles around in the most beautiful beaches, and trying to get a giggle out of anyone was virtually impossible. So I learned a long time ago is I don't even like seeing an audience in chairs that are too comfortable. I like them to be, the chairs to be as hard and unpleasant as possible. I want them to need us.
I'll make sure that they will have to suffer in Zurich before you come on stage.
I find a few pins on the chairs kind of helps. Don't go too far.
But I mean, it goes back historically a long way. I mean, Daniel Defoe writing about, eat your children to feed the poor kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I reckon also I reckon when we used to be chopping heads off and so on as punishments, and people would come from miles. Those were the comedy clubs of their days, People would come and see a head roll. And they'd stock up on cakes and things, and people would sleep over to get a good seat. And they'd laugh. They'd find it hilarious to watch, that kind of horror. When people think that comedy has gotten worse these days and it's getting nastier, they really need to look back on what people laughed at in the past, which was largely cruelty.
Well, I mean, pop songs of the early 19th century is kind of like lyric sheets distributed at hangings and
yeah, totally. Yeah.
So what has the Brexit thing done for comedians? I mean, it's almost too simple to take the piss out of, isn't it?
No, there's lots of people covering it. I haven't been really. I kind of if I've got a good thing to say about something, I'll get into it. But largely Brexit, I think it's very complex, and also it's changing all the time. So no, there's subjects I'll leave alone if they're being too covered. Not really interested. Why, is that what you wanted me to talk about in your club?
No. I was just generally wondering, because that's what I mean. It's like Donald Trump. It's such easy targets. It's almost not funny to go for it.
I think if you've got an angle, it's great, and there's a few things about Trump that I might talk about and might not, and I will talk about Brexit occasionally, but it's not a subject that it's particularly exciting me at the moment. You know, I think I think it is complex, and I think it's a great shame that we're leaving Europe, and for the reasons we're doing it is awful. You know, I was always a big fan of the Union, but at the same time, I think there's a lot of flaws in it, which comedians are as good as anyone else to address. But because they are complex, I don't like getting bogged down too much when I'm on stage. And if I'm doing an hour's show, I might get into a subject where I can really talk about something and talk about all the subtleties and the angles. But in a set, I don't want to ever say I'm not going to talk about a thing, but in a set, I generally want to just have a bit of fun.
Mm.
Yeah.
So what are your favourite targets at the moment?
I find it really interesting you call it targets. Like, I don't agree that comedy is always targets, though. Yeah. It was always trying to bring down the man. Lots of things. I don't know. I've had a Twitter storm recently, a pile-on with a lot of people with dwarfism who got angry with something I said. No, kind of finding that interesting to talk about at the moment because of the developments in it. But generally, no. Mostly for me, it's me. It's just what it's like being a middle-aged man who's in a gradual state of collapse. So that I'm my own fodder, really. You know. But anything else going on in the world, anything crosses my path is asking for it.
How much of it is improvised? How much is written?
Mostly I have written pieces, but I'll veer off and link things in odd ways, or depending on how the audience are reacting. Sometimes if the audience are giving you the nice kind of feedback, the best feedback an audience can give you is leeway, you know, where you can go off on one and play games with your material. Very often an audience sit with their arms folded, you know, they want to hear the punchline, and they always lose out because the comedian then recognises it and gets to the punchline, and all the possible bits of fun on the way to it just vanish away, you know. So that's what I'm saying to your audience. The test of a good audience: no arms folded, lean forward, big smiles, encouragement, and then I will take advantage of your kindness on your behalf. I think that's what a comedian does, by the way. I think a comedian you have to form a friendship with the audience in order to take advantage of them, and I do believe that comedy is taking advantage of people's sensibilities. I'm not into going out to see a night. If I'm in an audience, I'm not there to feel safe. You know, I'm there to be challenged, or, you know, have someone take a few risks.
Talk yourself out of a deep hole.
Yes, well, I do that a lot. But I think that's respectful to an audience to treat them the way I would treat myself, which is, you know, not protective.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Is that right?
That's great.